Welcome everybody back to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Ryan Woodard.
I'm Ashleigh Early.
And today we have Natalie Klun with us. And Natalie is a 20-year sales pro, author of Taking the Sell Out of Sales, creator of Be Magnetic Online, helping sales pros grow a network of happy clients and forever fans. So everybody, welcome Natalie.
Yay! Thanks for having me, guys. I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you.
So Natalie, why don't you start off, just tell for people who aren't familiar with you, just give them kind of the rundown. Kind of tell us about a little bit about your sales journey.
Sure. So I always say that I never intentionally set out to be in sales. In fact, it was kind of accidental. I just had a reoccurring theme with everything that I was doing. It happened to be sales. And I think it's funny because the irony of it is I'm literally the least competitive person you're ever going to meet. And then I end up in like one of the most competitive industries. So I'm like, all right, that's funny. Sometimes we get directed unintentionally, and then there's a bigger purpose at the other end of it. And 20 years later, I can reflect on that and be like, okay, I can see why now. I have been in sales. So gosh, I started off in Las Vegas. I was selling a real estate investment fund to investors, and I was constantly having to overcome my age because at the time I was in my early 20s, and most of them were looking at me like, who are you that is giving me investment advice? I have socks older than you. And so I learned at a really young age how to just be uncomfortable or comfortable in uncomfortable situations. So that I feel was a blessing. I then transitioned into the real estate industry. So I had a real estate and property management company for over 15 years. And I would say I spent the good majority of my sales career really trying to figure out how to feel comfortable in the industry. I wasn't comfortable with a lot of the training that I received, a lot of the tactics like always be closing, or just some of the more aggressive techniques. Like, again, I'm the least competitive person you're going to meet. And so telling me to do some of these aggressive techniques to get someone to do something just didn't feel right for me. So I really had to find my way. And it was in my real estate business. I went to, it's called prospecting school, intentionally put myself in a room for 2 days that was like nothing but cold calling. And I was not adequately prepared. And the coach, I think, kind of sensed that, and he would hover around my station. And every time he would see I was on the phone, he'd run over and plug into my call, which immediately caused me to freeze up. And a lot of people were hanging up on me. I just was really uncomfortable with the process. So finally, this coach pulled me aside, and, I think again, maybe to speak to some of the sales tactics that are out there, he was trying to motivate me in a very aggressive manner, and it was not clicking with me at all. In fact, it was causing me to shut down even more. And I think he sensed that and realized it and said, hey, look, you are here to just help people, and you happen to help people with real estate. And there was something about that, as simple as that was, that clicked in my brain. And I went back to the phones, literally called back everybody who hung up on me and was like, hey, it's me again. I know, our last call didn't go very well. And I just was honest with them in the sense that I said, I'm just here to help. And I'm just calling to see if there's something that I can help you with. And for what I found is that the defenses that people usually have in a selling scenario, or if they feel like a sell is being directed to them, or they feel like a sales pitch is coming their way, they naturally are guarded. And when I approached it from the helping perspective, they responded to me so differently. I ended up making the most appointments out of everyone that was at that particular training. Clients that were my clients through the end of when I sold that business. And I went back to my office and I'm like, okay, all of these techniques and tactics that I've learned all of these years, I'm going to stop doing them. I'm going to use the tools, but I'm going to use the tools in such a way that I'm just looking for people to help. And what was crazy is what ended up happening is I did a total experiment. I stopped running my ads. I stopped doing any of like the marketing stuff. And people were just coming to me and they were saying, can you help? Like they were using my word, or we know you can help. And I even had other agents, clients who were calling me, and which is a total no-no in any scenario. I don't believe in stepping on people's toes, and I'm not, I believe too much in what goes around comes around. So I'm not going to try to steal anyone's clients. But these were people that had simple questions and they were like, can you just help answer these questions? And I would redirect them back to their agent. And I was just curious, what was it about me that people seemed to be drawn to? And then those people, you know, if they knew someone who needed real estate services, they would then refer them to me. And so there was something about the energy of not trying to talk someone into doing something, not trying to sell to them at all, not going to an event with the intention to generate leads, not doing any of those practices that were taught in the sales profession, but simply just using tools in a way that allowed me to be curious and to position myself in a way that would make myself available to help people. And that was the game changer in my business. And that's really what inspired the book. And I sold my real estate practice because I wanted to go and help other business owners and sales professionals really change the way that they approach sales and how they show up in their business and how they use the tools like social media and calling people and interacting with people and really focusing on the relationship side of what it means to be a sales professional.
I think this is fantastic because there's a lot there, but I think you hit on one of the biggest hurdles we've got, I think, as a sales industry is we've got, I think, two big problems.
Yeah.
One is we're struggling to get people into the profession because of all the stigma around it, because people think it's always be closing. It's Wolf of Wall Street. It's Glengarry Glen Ross. And it isn't. You hit the nail on that head. Like, I want everyone to hear that this is not about getting people to do something they don't want to do. It's about helping.
Yep.
Literally, it's an awkward thing, but it's like you don't go to a doctor to have him sell you a medical treatment. You go to a doctor to get help.
Yes.
It's the same thing in sales. We are offering solutions to problems and we're trying to figure out if you've got the problem. Now you can do that in a human connection, relationship driven way, or you can do it in a commoditized, dehumanized way. And I love that you use that word dehumanized, especially because I, no joke, was talking today with one of my friends' partners. And of course I got the, so tell me, Ashleigh, what do you do question. And so I'm trying to explain what I do. And I usually explain what I do in the context of like, I help salespeople, but I train them and we're not the ones who call you at home. Like try to explain that it's B2B, because if you say B2B to someone who's not in the space, they're like, what? So I'm helping salespeople, but not the people who call you and not retail.
Yeah.
Typically. And he was like, oh, so you're training the people who are emailing me with these like super generic emails because my title at certain companies means I have decision-making power. I'm like, yes, but I train people not to do these generic ones that are going to everybody. And then they do that knowing that people like you are going to get these and just ignore it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's that commoditized. It's so easy to forget as sales reps. And it's funny because literally yesterday I was talking with one of my reps and who I'm coaching, and they're like, I just don't get it. Why don't people respond to me? Why don't people just say no? And we've got these two humans who are feeling this lack of connection and getting frustrated by it. One's frustrated that he gets hit with all these crazy messages that have nothing to do with his job. Another's super frustrated, like, why don't they just tell me it doesn't have anything to do with them? I'll happily leave them alone.
Yeah.
We're missing the human in the middle.
We are. And I think there's a couple of things that are happening with that. Like looking at it from a couple perspectives, like what's the motivation behind that kind of mass techniques? One, it's very time consuming to do this the right way. But I always believe in when you put quality in your efforts and realize that this is the long game, this isn't, a short win or a short strategy approach, then you have that time to invest. So I think there's this like instant gratification from the perspective of the people that say, okay, yes, I want to deploy these tactics that just kind of treat everybody as a number, right? So sales is a numbers game, right? So they're playing that numbers game. So they're blasting out a generic automated message that obviously isn't connecting. And you have to think about when you sit down to do something like that. Like, I get that we're trying to make ends meet, we're trying to survive, we're trying to make a living, whatever that is. But when you deploy tactics like that, you're hurting these relationships to the point that there's no recovering from it, right? So take a second and think about what the message that is coming across when you do something like that. And it's subconsciously sending a message that says, I am only interested in pushing my one-sided agenda, which is why people don't respond to that. And one of my favorite philosophies that I've learned, I heard it on a podcast. I want to say it was probably the School of Greatness, because that is one of my favorite podcasts I like to listen to. And there was something said to the effect of, you become interesting by being interested. So if you can reel yourself in for a minute, and instead of being like, I got to go and generate leads, or I got to go and I got to hit my numbers, or I got to do this, or whatever that tactic is, if you take a step back and you feel like, put yourself on the receiving end, how does that feel? And then consider that in order for someone to be interested in you, you need to be interested in them first. And then the other side of it that you have to consider is our brains are wired to accept what is familiar and reject what is unfamiliar. So when you get a message from someone that you have no idea who they are, our instinct, our human wiring says, alert, alert, we don't know who they are, they're not familiar, danger, even if someone's intention is good behind that. So we have to consider, okay, we have to become familiar. Well, how do we become familiar to them? How do we begin to build a relationship with them in a way and demonstrate how it is that we can help them in such a way that gives them the free will to say, I need that. They self-select you. That's what it means to take the cell out of cells. It means taking a step back, realizing that anyone that you sell to is a human being, understanding how humans respond, understanding the relationship building steps that need to go into it. And it's crazy when you apply that approach, the relationships move much quicker than if you just mass spray and pray a bunch of people and see which ones are going to stick. You might get a few here and there, but the long term or the quality is just not going to be sustainable. Like, you're going to get burned out on doing that. And so it's taking this approach that really positions you from a place that is building rapport, but also building that relationship, which is part of establishing trust with someone.
I think like everything that you're saying really adheres to what I've tried to like put out into my sales team and sales in general, which is empathy. And that's just something that's absent, not just in sales, but it seems like in almost every walk of life lately. I mean, you hear it, if somebody says the wrong politically incorrect thing, then it's like, cancel them and chastise them, where it's like, wouldn't it be a more acceptable approach to approach that with some empathy and think, what have they been through in their life that led them to that point, versus, just really coming down hard on somebody. And so now that I'm in a position where I am part of the decision-making team for some of the tech, and I do get inundated with some of these bad emails, it's made me have empathy with like, what's the message coming across, or where is that message coming from on their end? And I think that's something that's probably absent in a lot of leadership, because just like Ashleigh said, there's that two people that aren't getting the communication they want. Like the reps are like, oh, why don't they respond? And the guy's like, the leader guy, gal, they're on the other side like, why do I get all these bad emails? And it's like, maybe if that I've kind of complained that leaders oftentimes will show a bad email, but they rarely will, reach across the aisle, and not in a public way, but just say, hey, just some reaching out to you because this is really bad. First off, I'm going to start at a low spot. We're going to build you up. It's going to be all right. But, I'm curious as to what was your motivation to send me this email or send me this outreach? And I think a lot of those questions just go unasked. And so I'd be curious to your thoughts around maybe a little more skin in the game from the prospects as well, to say, hey, if I don't want to get hit with bad outreach, then I personally have reached out across the aisle and let some reps know, like, this was bad, this is the reason why, but you can't fix it. I'm guessing that it's like quota or some sort of up high that's coming down that's making you think you got to send all this generic outreach.
Well,
So
it's even more complicated than that. If I can just throw another layer on this,
Sure,
it's
sure.
easy for a sales leader to respond and say, this is bad, but let me talk about how to fix it. No big deal. It's another thing altogether for if you're doing real estate or you're selling to accounting or any other department. They have no clue what a good email is. They just know this is bad. It's like asking, somebody who's never eaten anything but McDonald's.
You think of this filet.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, what do you think? Exactly. But like, I don't know. This is, you give somebody who's never eaten anything but McDonald's a well done filet. They'll be like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
They
Well, and
don't
I think-
know what a proper cooked steak looks like.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about the theme of your podcast, is like the other side of sales, is that there's a lot of really bad information out there. We're getting a lot of bad information. And I personally, in fact, I saw a post on LinkedIn over the weekend, and it was someone kind of calling out the generic messages and is like, are you afraid to connect with someone or have a conversation with someone because you're afraid of getting a sales pitch? And I think it was a poll, and so the majority were saying yes. And I have a philosophy that when you block one group or one, if you're trying to block something out, you're not just blocking that out, you're blocking everyone out. And so when I get a sales pitch or when someone sends me a message, I try to like get them out of that like robot mode, like that. Like, why do you feel like this is a fit for me? And then oftentimes it like kind of snaps them out of it, and then you can have like a real conversation. So I love what you said about leading with empathy, Ryan, because I do feel like we are in this hyper critical, hyper judgmental, like there's a lot, it's really easy to like be critical of someone behind a screen or through a social media post or whatever that is. But when we really understand like what is that person's motivation, maybe like they're just trying to make ends meet, they're just trying to survive. They've maybe got a sales manager breathing down their neck, and they're like terrified that if they don't hit their goal, that they're going to lose their job. So maybe we take a step back and we say, okay, they've been given bad information. Bad information is out there. Bad information is circulating. I know from
so much.
When I was in my early on in my sales career, I didn't have a manager who was supportive. I had a competitive manager who would intentionally try to put the entire sales team down to make her look good. And so I didn't understand what it was like to be able to go into my team and get support. I had to go and find those trainings and those resources. And a lot of, especially when I started, it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it was all this real kind of hardcore aggressive type tactics that were, the numbers game and all of those sort of tactics. And they just felt completely unnatural to me. Like I shared, I'm not a competitive person at all. I truly want everyone to win, right? So I think we have to like take a step back and not be blocking those unsolicited sales pitches out. But we also can take responsibility for ourselves and say, okay, this clearly is not a tactic that is received well. My goal is to have a long-term career in sales and build quality relationships with people that will not only become a happy client, but will become a fan that will then tell other people about me. And there is a way that you can cultivate and build those relationships. So when you do send a message out to someone, it's received in a way that sends the message that you are genuinely interested in understanding how it is that you can help them. Now, ways that you can formulate better messages, really understand the problem that your prospect or that someone that you can help in your business has. And oftentimes, just simply being curious and asking them a question like, hey, when it comes to this, what do you find is a problem? And if they have a genuine problem that you can solve, be bold enough to say, you know what, I can help you with that. Do you want me to tell you how? And then there is that dialogue that, again, they don't feel like they're getting pitched. They don't feel like you're coming at them as if you're trying to fix them. No one wants to feel like they're broken. And if we're approaching people as if they're broken and we're trying to fix them, again, it's not going to be received well.
Well, and it's even, yeah, I think you hit something really important there, just even by mentioning the word pitch. We use a lot of lingo ourselves in the sales community to describe the process of our job.
Yes.
And even just the very idea of pitching won't get you anywhere. We all have to know how to pitch. That's a core skill. I'm not saying you don't need to know how to pitch, because the art of pitching is to be able to explain how you can help someone succinctly. That's a pitch. But delivering that in the pitching sense never works.
No.
What does work is having a conversation where you work that in.
Yeah.
So even the art of like, okay, did you pitch them? Just our language saying there, that just immediately reverts us back to this other thing. Plus, I'm hearing more and more people saying words because we're talking like this. Like if you use medic or band or whatever your sales qualification criteria is, we always talk about decision maker and authority. And so we hear people on calls ask questions like, are you the decision maker? Nobody talks like that outside of sales.
Yeah.
Nobody talks like that. You don't ask people like who, like you can ask who has budget, who owns this budget, or who has final approval, stuff like that. But people were thinking like salespeople and not thinking like our prospects and thinking like humans, which all comes back to empathy. Mm-hmm. But the other thing I think it's really important here, Natalie, to talk about like with, creating long-term relationships and stuff like that. And just as a case point here, no joke, I had someone reach out to me, a month or two ago, that I prospected as an SDR, no joke, in 2011.
Oh, wow.
Just, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Completely random. This is a Fortune 100 CIO.
Yeah.
And he remembered me because I made a Star Trek joke, which if you know me, I'm super into Star Trek. So this is the thing.
Yeah.
But he apparently was like, he saw something and it made him think of me, and he went and he found me, which I was shocked. I barely remembered the conversation. That's an example of a lasting relationship. You can do good things. This is now a guy that if I'm ever in that space again, I now have a connection to him that I can go probably get something out of. So even if you're like just a lowly SDR, you can still build lasting relationships. I don't have a ton of those, and they don't have the longevity that they would have if you're in a full cycle role, but it matters. The other side of that, though, I think is really important, is especially for sales leaders, and I think especially when you're in a high volume, low ACV, low MRR sort of deal, it's really easy to get sucked into and I forget what the term is, but a non-abundance mindset.
Yeah.
A scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
It's really easy to get sucked into scarcity, and you have to operate from abundance.
Yeah.
It has to be. There is so much opportunity out there. We just have to go get it, because it's so easy to be like, oh no, we have to get there first. We have to get through this. No, you have to get to the right people first.
Yeah. Well, and that's like the energy of competition, especially in the sales industry, mm-hmm. is that it's that lack mentality. I have to take from you in order to have a gain for myself. Well, that's completely false. That is really not the case. There is
the only place that might be true is the federal budget. That's probably the only place that's true.
But the reality is there is more than enough to go around. Like there
Yeah.
truly is more than enough to go around. And I think you said something that I think it's important to touch on, is that part of building a rapport with people and part of building a relationship is how do you make them feel? And you think about, especially online and how we are using virtual tools like social media, how does someone feel when they have an encounter with you online or on the phone or in person? Do they feel like you cared what was happening in their life, or do they feel like you were just interested in pushing their product on them? I promise you, the next time they have an encounter with you, which likely online they won't unless they're already connected with you, if you've lost that first opportunity to make that first impression, more than ever, you're not going to get a second chance. Someone's not going to come back and be like, I wonder if they'll send me a different kind of message, or I wonder if they've changed their profile, or whatever that might be. They're not going to come back and follow up with you.
Especially because now there's a paper trail.
Yeah. And so if you approach it and like, okay, how would I feel if someone approached me in this manner? Would I feel good? Would I feel like they cared? I mean, I think more than anything, the subconscious message we need to be sending to those who we want to build a relationship with is that we genuinely care, that we genuinely want to know what's going on in their world, and how is it that we can support, and how is it that we can help them. And you think about what I think is super interesting, and I always like to ask people this question: if those mass marketing efforts worked, if you sent out the however many messages, which I know on platforms like LinkedIn they're really limiting that, but at one time you could just blast a bunch of people with a connection request or a message, what would happen if you got all of the, like a big wave of leads coming into your business? Would you be able to manage that volume? And more likely than not, you wouldn't. It would buckle. So you have to be realistic in the sense of saying, okay. And one of the things that I do in working with my clients is we break their goal down to the day. We say, okay, realistically, how many people do you need to bring into your world in order to successfully hit your goal? And by doing that, it does a couple of things. One, it instantly busts the myth that you have to have a large network in order to be successful. I think that's kind of the thing that social media has brought to the table, that you have to have these mass volume of followers or views or whatever in order to hit your goal. Where if there again was an influx of leads, let's say you had a video that did have 1 million views, what if like you had a small percentage of that coming through? Would you be able to manage that? And likely no, you wouldn't. So we say, okay, why are we deploying mass marketing strategies when we need to be deploying quality strategies that allow us to build quality relationships with people that then allow us to hit our goal? So we have to really look at the strategies that we're deploying. What is the goal? And do we have the bandwidth that if it does work, if we are deploying something that offers tremendous value and people respond in a positive way, do we have the bandwidth to actually follow through on that and support the volume that would come through?
Well, especially if you keep in mind that whatever comes in, whether it's in response to a mass marketing thing or just straight inbound or whatever, a portion of that is not going to be business that you want. Yep. Always. So if you all of a sudden 10x the amount of meetings you're doing, you're also 10xing the amount of meetings that are shit, that don't turn into business, that can't turn into business.
Yeah.
So it's not just like, wow, because everyone's like, oh, well, if I get 5x more meetings, I'll hire more people and we'll do this and it'll be fine. We can do it. But you forget about all the stuff that is going to keep happening that doesn't generate you money.
Yeah.
What's interesting, I think there, if I can ask, I'm kind of jumping on Ryan's question here, but this is fascinating to me. I think you're spot on with like, you have to be targeted and specific, and you have to be quality over quantity. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where I think it's interesting though, is you can do a good amount at scale, but what makes it passable, I tell people all the time, is just manners, just being polite.
Yeah.
So whether that comes across, and I deal with this a lot with people who, especially who are new or who are not used to high volume. It's this, oh God, I'm going to piss people off. Oh God, I'm going to, exactly what we're talking about. It's like, oh God, this fear of, I don't want to ruin the relationship.
Yeah.
And if you just diffuse that with a little bit of manners, a little bit of, like being upfront. Hey, I'm trying to figure out if I can help you by solving this problem. If you don't have the problem, please tell me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most people are fine with that, versus if you're like, hey, I'd like to schedule a 30-minute call to discuss whether or not you'd ever consider doing XYZ ABC because XYZ.
Yeah.
Like you get like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's like mowing over. It's like that again, it's pushing your agenda. And I always call it like, just be a person, just be human. Right?
Yes.
Just talk to them like a human. Don't talk over them. Don't talk down to them. Don't, steamroll them with your agenda. Just be a person. That's all. I think that gets you so much further along than, like you said, blasting them with your agenda.
Yeah, and it's the phrase I started using lately is trust your prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Do your research and trust your prospect that they will tell you if they're a fit. Trust your prospect that they will tell you if they're not a fit.
Absolutely.
But give each other that little bit of trust, and we'll figure it out on the backside. But
yeah, well, and I think the other thing too is, and I can't remember where I heard these statistics or these numbers. So if you've heard this, like, and you know where you've heard it from, share with me, because I'm always like, I heard this and I can't remember where I heard it from, but it's really good. It's really helpful. So there's there's 3 groups of people. Okay. So there's 5% that are that person that needs what you have to offer right now. It's like, and that's when it gets exciting. That's like, you just happen to be at the right place at the right time, and they're an instant yes. And it just goes really smoothly. And that kind of seems to be the sales encounters that people want. I mean, obviously it's really fun.
And the magic moments.
Yeah. And that they tend to chase. Then there's this other 45% of people that they don't know you. You're unfamiliar to them. We've got to build a relationship with them. We've got to be top of mind in a way that then gives them an opportunity to get to know you and to start to establish and have trust with you, right? And that can take a little bit of time. But if we're approaching them as if we're approaching the 5%, and then we're not following through with building a relationship with them, then we lose that opportunity to bring those people in as a potential client, right? Then there's the other 50%, they're not your people. Learn how to spot them, let it go, and not pursue them because they're not your ideal audience or your ideal network. So approaching your prospecting in such a way, considering these 2 groups of people, and I mean, you will know if they are in the 5% or in the 40, you'll know, like, and so it's like, okay, asking questions, learning what it is that they're looking for, what are their goals, and then positioning yourself in such a way. And that's what I love about social media, is it does give you the opportunity to nurture these relationships every day, where pre-social media, it was picking up the phone, it was going to see them in person. There was a lot of time that went into growing those relationships, where now we have this opportunity where we can further those relationships much more quickly if we use these tools correctly.
I think a lot of what we've been talking about is kind of like really adheres to transparency and being as transparent as possible through that process. And so I like to lead with that transparency, and that's what I've kind of been trying to train my reps on is, to borrow from my friend Beck Holland, is fall on the sword. Don't mince words. And when I get emails, it's like, I don't need to know. And I don't, quite frankly, it's kind of rude, but I don't care that you hope I'm having a great day, because it really has no influence on the actual conversation that you're trying to have with me. And so I think showing some transparency is huge. It really helps me make a decision quickly whenever I'm getting a sales email or sales outreach. So would be curious to know if you have that same belief or if transparency has kind of played a big role in your ability to kind of connect with people and have those conversations pretty quickly?
Oh, 100%. Going back to the story that I shared from the beginning when I was at prospecting school and I went back and literally called everyone that had hung up on me or that I went radio silent on because the coach plugged into my phone. And I called them back and I was like, well, before you hang up, let me start over. I'm just calling to see if I can help. And the conversations were so different. I felt their defenses going down. Like when before I was calling and because I was at this particular school there, of course, they're giving me the scripts and the things to say and all of that sort of stuff. And it felt so unnatural to me. But I'm trying to be a good student, right? And so, but it didn't go well. It was when I called back and was completely willing to, like you said, fall on the sword, be vulnerable and say, hey, I have no agenda other than to see if you need help. And like I said, I ended up making, and this was in the second day. So it was 2 days. It was in the second day. I ended up making more appointments than anyone else there at that particular event because I think it was that willingness to just kind of drop the BS. People can feel it, they can see it, they can sense it. Sure, scripts are useful if they help you to ask questions or to be curious. But when you're following it to the T and you're not super comfortable with it, they can completely backfire on you. So it was that full transparency and just like, I'm just here to see if I can help, and it was crazy what happened in my business. That year it tripled. And again, I stopped my ads. I stopped doing all of the things that my coach was telling me to do. I still used the tools. I still picked up the phone and called people. I still made my appointments and did all of the things that you do to build relationships with people, but my energy was very different. And people, like I said, I would be at the hospital getting blood drawn and they were like, oh, you do real estate. Can you help me with this? Or I'd be at AT&T with myself. It was crazy how people just approached me. And it's like they knew who I was and they knew that I could help. And I'm like, there's something to this energy stuff.
No, there really is, and it's kind of freaky how it works, and it's scary at first. It's really scary the first couple times you do it. I mean, I don't know, I've had to learn this lesson repeatedly. I still have to learn this lesson. I still have to be reminded myself that no, this is easier. Like no joke, I got my first meeting ever on a screwed up pitch.
Mm.
I was stuttering. I was all over the place. It was terrible. And I just stopped mid call and I was like, I'm really sorry. This is terrible. I'm new. Would you mind if I started over? And I do not know what possessed me, but I got up, like the guy on the other end of the phone laughed and was like, yeah, sure. No worries.
Yeah.
Took a meeting.
It's just,
And he said, and what's hysterical is he said at the end of it, honestly, if you hadn't done that, I think if you had just started with the pitch you did at the end, I don't think I would have said yes.
mm.
So sometimes being human and screwing up, that's what creates the relationship. It's, remember how terrible I was? That was my fourth day.
Yeah.
It's crazy these things that can happen. But the other side of it is too, you made a point about scripts. I build scripts for people now too and stuff like this. And one of the things I tell people is I'm writing a script, but do not use it as a script. This is not verbatim. This is talking points.
Exactly.
I'm going to give you all the ingredients. You assemble it however you want. And I can give this exact script. And I work with sales leaders. I tell them this all the time. Like, look, there are certain things in a script you can't change. Like the exact positioning of the company, there's nuance there that needs to be controlled by marketing, I think, to a point, but that really needs some heavy marketing influence. The rest of this stuff, it's basically, we've got to give the ingredients to the sales team and let them cook whatever dish they want. But that means if you have 30 sales reps, if you have 100 sales reps, you're going to end up with 100 slightly different dishes. Yeah. That's great because each one of the dishes are going to be the best dish that person can make. And that's what you want, right? You want the best dish that each person can make, not everyone to make the exact same dish, but have it only work a lower percentage of the time. You want everyone to make their best dish all the time. That's what'll get people coming back.
Absolutely. And again, it's the energy thing. And if you don't believe that energy is a thing or that we're not energy and that there isn't energy in all of our encounters. Just go to the grocery store, for example, and look them in the eyes. And now I think as we're starting to not have our masks anymore, and smile. Very likely they will smile back at you. Or if you want to try the other end of it, have like a total scowl on your face and like give people like a stare down and see how they react to you. These are total strangers. Or if you want to even take it to another level, like now that we're kind of starting to get to go and be in amongst each other, go sit at an event by yourself at a table and just smile and look at people and see how many people will come up and talk to you. Or sit at a table and just not make eye contact and just have your energy in a way that is saying, I'm closed, don't come talk to me. That's how energy works. And so when you approach yourselves in that way, that considering how you are making people feel, you will have a very different response. And so to speak to, to those who may be nervous about what it means to be a salesperson, or they don't want to feel like, ooh, sales is gross. Like I don't want to do that to somebody. Again, if you are terrified and you are nervous and you're not, like what you did with your first sales pitch, the fact that you were like, okay, hold on, reset, timeout, let me start over.
Yeah.
That takes so much courage. And if you just give yourself that it's okay to not be perfect, it's okay to not put off an image that may not feel genuine, people are going to respond to that. And then if you feel nervous and you're trying to follow the scripts and you're trying to do that, people are also going to feel that as well. And then to speak to that, I would say just practice on your friends, practice on your family, practice on anyone who will go through that with you, because the more it becomes familiar to you, the more you feel comfortable being uncomfortable, the less that you will be impacted by those nerves.
I have to say, I love that. I love this just go smile at strangers thing, because that's a great exercise. John Barrows always says, one of the best ways to get uncomfortable being uncomfortable is to ask for upgrades, which is great, and also does totally work way more often than it should. Yeah. An interesting thing I've noticed now that I recently moved to Europe.
Okay.
There are parts of Europe where smiling at strangers really freaks the heck out of them.
Oh, I'm sure.
So it's been really interesting to do that. Even I would say, like, do it not just where you live, but do it anytime you travel, do it and see how people react.
Yeah.
Because it's a really interesting case study in markets and stuff like that, because there are certain parts of the Netherlands where I've done that. And I'm American. I'm pretty obviously American. I'm not walking around with a fanny pack and a flag, but I'm pretty obviously American. And I'll walk around, I'm just smiley, and I'll look people in the eye and smile because I'm just so excited to be out finally and not in quarantine, lockdown. But it's interesting. I can tell I'm starting to notice generationally and regionally the areas where, okay, that makes people uncomfortable. So I'm going to tone it down a little bit because I don't want to make people uncomfortable. And the regions where I do want to do it, or the areas I want to do it and stuff like that. So it becomes, you put out what you put in, sort of thing too. So you can figure out not just when to attract people by putting things out, and when to attract people by curating your own energy in such a way that they come back to you.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's
a really fun thing to start playing with.
Yeah. It's like being able to kind of be like, just to be able to read the room, right? You know, so if it makes someone uncomfortable, obviously the goal and the intention is to not make someone uncomfortable. So one of the things that I learned is just how do you mirror their energy? How do you meet them where they're at? Because obviously if you're just like over the top, really high energy, and they're like, whoa, I haven't even had my coffee yet. Like, you got to slow your roll there, sister. So you have to really, again, to like read the room. But the whole point of that exercise is just if you don't believe in energy, go and just see how you can, people will look at you. Or I remember one day I was out and I don't know, I have my little dog, and he likes to go for rides, and we have the window down, and I got my music on. It's like just a way to kind of like decompress. And I just was in a really good mood. And people are like waving at me. I'm like, what? Oh, hi. Like, I'm like, it's hilarious because I'm like, who wave? And no one waves at each other anymore. But people are waving, and I'm like, oh, I must really just be putting out like what I'm feeling, which I was feeling really good and really like feeling the music and the just the time off. So yeah.
No, I totally with you. And like same thing, like the code word I figured out in the Netherlands for interaction is a drink in the hand. So if I'm sitting out in front of my house and I'm just sitting and reading a book or something, people ignore you, you ignore them. The moment there is a drink present, alcoholic or not, everyone's engaging. Everyone's saying "Goedenavond," "Goedenacht," you know, the whole thing. Everyone's trying to talk to me in Dutch, and I'm like, "Ha, spreekt je Engels?" You know, it's but it's fascinating to figure out what these tricks are, and you really do. People pick up on these things, and that's why it's so important to protect your energy.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're really grinding yourself down, people pick up on that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's an important thing to point out is, and this comes in with the sales industry, I feel particularly that constant hustle and grind mode. It's not sustainable. You will burn out, and you'll burn out sooner than later. So there is that, managing those expectations. And I think like what you were talking about earlier, and I know Ryan mentioned this a couple of times with a sales manager or a sales leader, not having those expectations, that's going to cause people to burn out. Like that's not building a culture. The sales industry has a reputation for really high turnover. Is it because we're pushing people and having unrealistic expectations and not building a culture that is supportive and empathetic?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that that's part of the issue. I've had friends that were on the sales side and went into like the development side, and they have been adamant about the culture difference.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that you even having the courage to kind of challenge a lot of these notions is something that's hard for salespeople because, we're told to be challenging. We're told, the challenger sale and to be this kind of disruptor, but then we have a quota that's held over our head that we have to still be responsible for. And it's like, okay, if I ruffle feathers or challenge on this and is, in 3 months or 6 months, if I don't hit quota for 1 month, am I axed? So, I'm kind of curious, how did you manage some of that quota and then being a little rebellious in a sense while not making enemies, I guess, while, getting allies on board with your kind of train of thought there?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, what was really hard with the role that I was in my first sales position was having a highly competitive sales manager. It was this constant dread going into the office. It was knowing that no matter what I did, she would find something to critique, and she did it to the whole team. But I felt like for me, especially, it was early on in my career, and I was already having to overcome my age with the clientele that we were working with, which was primarily retirees. So when I left that environment, I said two things to myself. So this is the advice that I would give. Is one, you feeling supported and happy and enjoying what you do is a priority, no matter what anyone else will say. So it is okay to either go find that environment and have those non-negotiables for yourself that will then support you so you can perform at the highest level possible. For me, it was becoming my own boss. It was becoming my own. After I left that's when I started my own thing and I've been a business owner since then, because I wasn't going to put myself in a situation where I felt so devalued. And it really was, it took a toll on my confidence, and it took some time to rebuild it. But then when I was responsible for other people, when I had people coming in and were a part of my team and I was training them, and that's one of the reasons why I do what I do now, because I love helping people win. So to have them take that leap of faith. So most of the agents that came to work with me and my real estate firm they'd never been on commission only. They are coming from a salary job or whatever that was that reoccurring paycheck. And now they're saying, okay, I am going into a commission only. It was terrifying. And I just promised them, I will teach you everything that I know. But how do we create an environment that really allows them to flourish? And then to see them make six figures or multiple six figures in their year. I had agents who went on and built their dream homes, started their own business, those sort of things. And to me, that was really exciting. So I think leaders need to realize that they're only as strong as their team. And the way of building a team that used to work 20 years ago or however long ago, it doesn't work anymore. And that we need to really truly build a culture that gives people the desire that they want to be there. And then two, is people showing up, having their non-negotiables and their expectations that they're going to be treated well, that they're going to be excited about what it is that they're selling and what they're offering, and that they're going to give it their all, but they're also not going to allow themselves to be mistreated or have expectations that are put on them that are just not realistic. That's going to cause them to go into burnout.
It's great points. I agree with all of them. I always tell my team too that, like there's always the superior, I hate even using that word, and subordinate. I always tell my team, like, I work for you. It's not, you don't work for me. I'm here to serve you. What do you need? Is there any challenges that maybe I'm missing that I can help with? Anything and everything at all. I just try and make myself, I hate using the cliche too, like servant leader, but if I put myself out there and, am empathetic and transparent, then I feel like I've given them every chance, hopefully, to be successful. And hopefully it doesn't come down to the wrong person, but.
And that's what it's about. It's whether you're dealing with your team or dealing with your boss or dealing with your clients. It's creating an environment where everyone has the best chance to succeed. That's sales. Yep. That's sales, yep. Not manipulation, not forcing people to do things, not setting people against each other. It's creating an environment where everybody wins. That's sales. That's what makes it so freaking hard. Yeah. Your company has to win, you have to win, your manager has to win, and your client has to win.
I think maybe it's because like the B2C relationship with sales is so, people feel like they are manipulated. If they go to buy a car, it's, now there's Carvana and these new ones, but it's like this process that isn't very customer centric. If, AT&T or somebody comes and does, not trying to hate on AT&T, but does like the door-to-door campaign, there's always like this, they put this false sense of urgency into you that if you don't sign the paper right then and there, then you're going to miss out and you're going to hate yourself for it.
I was really bummed when FOMO became a word, because I was like, oh God, that's literally what we've been doing for years. All things old are new again. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. We've got, like I said, I said this at the top, and I said our first problem is we're having trouble getting people in, and our second problem is we're having trouble keeping them in because the culture isn't right. And I mean, Natalie hit the nail on the head. The way we hired and built teams 20 years ago does not work today. I say the way we hired and built teams, honestly, the way I was building teams 10 years ago does not work today. And I'm super excited to see where it's going to be in 10 years, touch wood, with everything that we're doing right now. This has been fabulous. This has been so much fun having you on, Natalie. And we're going to end this episode the same way we end every episode, with a series of questions we call the lightning round. These are designed to be a bit rapid fire, a little bit fun, nothing too heavy, but don't think about any of it too much. Just first answers are great. Okay. So first question, what's your morning routine?
Oh, I have a non-negotiable morning routine where I wake up and I spend at least 20 minutes meditating. I believe in using meditation as a way to kind of calm my nervous system or really set my energy for the day. An outlet that I love to do is journaling, and some of my best ideas come from that moment that I spend quieting my mind and then writing afterwards. And then I ride my Peloton for 30 minutes. So that's my non-negotiable morning, and it just kicks my day off in such a way that when I don't do it, I notice a big difference.
Pick one person who's had a significant impact on your career. You've kind of shared the coach at the
Yeah,
the sales training, but
we had an impact in a way that for sure. And I would just say there's so many amazing people out there. Like I love the day and age that we are in business where we get access to people like, these podcasts like with what you're producing. And I get so much good information from just, I'm a big reader, so I love to read. So to say one person, oh my gosh, that would be hard to do. I know that there's just a lot of really great influencers. And I always look at it from the perspective of those people are showing me what is possible. They're not competition. They're not someone that I should compare myself to. They are showing me what's possible. So if you want to know, like you have a goal, there are people out there that are evidence, living proof that your goal is possible. So I can't just pick one.
fair enough.
Well, I'll make you pick one of these then.
Okay.
What's your pump up song?
Oh, Running Down a Dream by Tom Petty.
Yes. No one said Tom Petty yet, I don't think.
Oh.
And
After this, you have to turn that song on. You'll be so pumped up.
it'll be added to the Other Side of Sales Spotify playlist on a
Running Down
Spotify near you. Oh,
that
so
I
good.
always say that would be the song, like if there was a movie about my life or about whatever, like either the opening credit, it'd be the opening credits. Like that would be my opening credit song.
What's one thing you'd wish you learned earlier?
I wish I would have learned to listen to myself and to trust myself and to trust my intuition. It's taken me 40 something years to get to that place. And if I would have done that in my 20s, first of all, I would have never stayed in the environment as long as I did with a sales manager that was a complete a-hole.
I feel like a lot of salespeople make that. It's like that. I feel like that's kind of one of those classic mistakes you kind of have to make to learn the hard way.
Yeah. Well,
I hate
know
when you know too. Like I knew I was making a mistake, but I guess I let like greed kind of set in, where I was like,
Greed
this,
or
this
fear
would have been the path
or
of
any
least
number of
resistance
things.
for me, and I was just
like,
being lazy and
here's all
greedy.
the boxes you have to check. You got to do this. You got to do this. And I was checking off all the boxes, but simultaneously I was completely abandoning myself, where it took a long time to realize what it means to not only value me and myself and trust when something feels right or when something doesn't feel right. That's what I wish I would have learned earlier.
All right.
That's awesome.
What book has had the biggest impact on your sales career?
I would say The Power of Intention, which it's not really a business book, but it's about being intentional on the life that you want to create, by Wayne Dyer. That was probably my first personal development book that I read that really, I thought to myself, okay, I can be in the driver's seat of my experience. That's my life, right? So I would say The Power of Intention was that book that really started that trajectory for me.
What's a way that someone could have been a better ally to you in the past?
I would say just letting me kind of figure things out on my own, versus I think everybody has their idea of like, this is what you should do. And I think it kind of starts with like our relationship with our parents or whoever was like that authority influencer growing up, rather than having that, this is what you need to do. Like, here's all the boxes you need to check. I wish that I would have had an ally that said, you know what? Figure it out, go and explore, go try new things, go just put yourself out there. That to me would have been, I think, more of an ally than telling me, here's all the boxes to check off.
What's one way you're working to be a better ally for others?
I'm really passionate about the message of just humanizing the sales process and using sales and your business and your service or your product as a means to make a difference in the world. I truly believe we all share the same purpose, which is to lift one another up. Our means may be different, our outlets may be different, but it's a purpose. So when you go to work, when you go to your sales job, if you view it as a means to make a difference in the world, again, you will show up very different in that role. Or you might find like, okay, this isn't the place for me, but you go and you find that place that allows you to, your job ends up being more than just a means to an end, it's a means to make a difference in the world.
Finally, what's your guilty pleasure after a bad day?
Oh, reality TV, like Real Housewives, Below Deck, the Kardashians. I legit watched like that. I mean, I didn't stay up all night, but there was like a marathon on. But those are
for the
some
finale.
Yeah, I have to say, seeing their evolution and wow, what they are willing to do to make their goals become a reality, it's pretty inspirational. So I just reality TV, that's my guilty pleasure.
I love it. Natalie, this has been delightful chatting with you. We really appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you? How can people get in touch?
Absolutely. So anywhere on social media, my name, Natalie Klun, it's Klun. So if you go into social media, you type in my name, my website is natalieklun.com. Please send me a connection, a message. Like, I'm super approachable. I love to meet people. I love having conversations. And I love supporting other people. So yeah, reach out and let me know what was something that you got from this episode. I would love to hear it.
I love that. And please do share those all on social media. Make sure to tag Twitter. It's OSOS_pod, LinkedIn, other side sales on Instagram. All that stuff, make sure to tag us as well. And we'll put all of Natalie's information in the show notes as well. And with that, if you enjoyed this show, please do consider leaving us a review on your podcast catcher of choice. It's a huge help to improving visibility and stuff like that. Please go check out Natalie's website. She is absolutely amazing, as you can tell. And with that, thank you of listening to another episode of The Other Side of Sales, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you, Ashleigh. Thank you, Ryan, for having me.
Yeah, thanks for showing up. Thanks, Natalie.